Inside a towering building, the sound of a news broadcast fills the room as water runs from a nearby shower. The voice on the screen announces the upcoming shareholder meeting that will decide the new chairman of Samjung Group, one of the top 3 conglomerates in the nation. Seongguk listens while showering. Eyes fixed on the television, the anchor then reveals that the new chairman has been chosen. It is Seongguk. Stepping out of the shower, dripping wet, he throws his head back and laughs in disbelief and triumph, his grin wide with pride as he says with confidence, "Yes, go on. Praise me more." Filled with arrogance, he declares that he will become the king of Samjung Group and that the world will honor him. Memories flash through his mind. His childhood filled with relentless studying and dealing with irresponsible siblings. He remembers taking care of his ill uncle, handling an arranged marriage, and shaping a flawless public image in a society that constantly demanded more. Despite all the obstacles, he had done everything right. Now holding a glass of wine, he looks out with satisfaction, thinking he finally owns everything he worked for. Soon the company would be officially his. Grabbing his phone, he begins listing the people he intends to remove, those who failed him or stood in his way. But in the middle of his moment of power, his phone slips from his hand. A sharp pain hits his chest. His heart pounds erratically. The wine glass crashes to the floor. His breath catches. His eyes land on a framed photo of his grandfather, the same grandfather who once died of a heart attack. Realization hits him hard. It is happening to him too. He refuses to accept it. This was supposed to be his moment of celebration, but before he can do anything, everything fades and his body gives out. A gentle voice calls to him. A soft hand touches his cheek. He opens his eyes in shock. He is no longer a man. He is a child, a baby being held in the arms of 2 people, his parents, their faces glowing with happiness. He touches his soft baby face in disbelief and cries out, "What is happening?" His mother smiles, saying how adorable and handsome their baby is. His father agrees proudly. Maybe he'll grow up to be a celebrity. They laugh and beam with joy, but Seongguk is screaming inside. This is torture. He remembers his chiseled body sculpted through years of discipline, now reduced to this tiny, fragile form. He had only one night as king before everything was ripped away. Worse, he quickly realizes he has been reborn into a poor family. Looking around their modest home and simple clothes, the truth hits him. They have nothing except love, longing for his luxurious lifestyle. He suddenly craves his favorite wine, the one that cost 4 million won per bottle. But instead, someone offers him a bottle of milk. He wants to resist, but his baby body betrays him. His mouth waters, and before he knows it, he drinks it all, disgusted but helpless. His father kisses his cheek and Seongguk winces. He would rather be dead than live like this. He cries again in fury, but his parents just assume he's tired or hungry. They hold him close with warmth he never had in his past life. His childhood had been cold, his family distant. No one ever really cared whether he ate or smiled. His father was mostly absent, his siblings cruel. Remembering all of it makes him cry harder. His parents gently put him to sleep. As he drifts off, his father turns on the TV and sits down. A news report begins, and suddenly Seongguk's eyes fly open. He hears a name he never thought he would hear again. His grandfather is alive and well. He realizes this isn't the future. It's the past. Shock runs through him as he sees the report. His grandfather is involved in the Apple Box bribery scandal, being investigated by prosecutors and appearing in court. Memories come flooding back from when Seongguk was 10, the scandal that nearly destroyed their family's reputation. Critics claim the company's rise was built on corruption. Seongguk watches in frustration, thinking if money is such a problem for people, then influence and connections should matter even more. People always believed saving money made them rich. But that wasn't the reality he lived. Meanwhile, his parents are simply delighted watching him crawl for the first time, amazed at how intelligent he seems for a baby, wondering how he understands so much already. Meanwhile, Seongguk's thoughts are spinning as he continues to process everything. He remembers clearly the day his grandfather had to appear before the prosecutors and how he was used as part of the act. Back then, at just 10 years old, he had been made to push his grandfather's wheelchair in front of cameras, a carefully crafted performance designed to earn sympathy from the public. But to Seongguk, it was his moment of arrival, the day he declared silently to the world that he was the rightful heir to Samjung Group. Yet there was always an obstacle. His foolish younger uncle, John Tae, who had gone overseas under the guise of studying, but instead turned into a disgrace, falling into addiction and constantly trying to steal Seongguk's position. Pressing his small hand against the glowing TV screen, Seongguk's face burns with frustration. But none of that is the real issue now. The true problem isn't being reborn or even waking up in the past. The actual nightmare is losing everything he built. The life he dominated now slipping through his fingers as he's trapped in the body of a helpless child. Tears pour down his cheeks as he cries without holding back. Soon the sky darkens and his mother enters, holding a tray of food. He hasn't eaten anything since morning and his stomach rumbles loudly. Still, his eyes stay glued to the news report flashing on the screen. His mother watches with concern growing by the second. Just then, his father comes home carrying a small bag with excitement in his voice. He announces that his boss at the restaurant gave him some leftover meat. He's thrilled to prepare a special meal for his family, but as he walks toward the kitchen, his wife stops him. She looks worried and explains that their son hasn't eaten, hasn't slept properly, and only watches television all day. Dark circles are visible under his small eyes, and when they try changing the channel, he bursts into tears. Hearing this, the father smiles reassuringly and says, "Leave it to me, I'll fix it." He walks over playfully, trying to distract the boy, but before he can even reach for the remote, Seong-guk grabs his finger and shoots him a piercing glare. The father freezes on the spot, startled by the intensity in his child's eyes. Inside Seong-guk's mind, there's no time for this. Every second counts. The more he learns, the better his chances of understanding his reality, the condition of the company, the actions of his grandfather, and most of all, how to return to his rightful body. But just when he's focused, the TV screen goes dark. His mother has turned it off. Her voice gentle as she says, "You haven't eaten anything yet. Please eat something first." But Seong-guk breaks into loud sobs again, his heart screaming in silence. "What do you know? Do you have any idea what I went through to claim my place? I built everything from the ground up only to lose it in one night. None of this matters to me. I just want my body back." His arms reach toward the now black screen as tears run down his cheeks. His mother strokes his back and softly tells him to rest for now. You can watch again tomorrow. Exhausted and emotionally drained, his hunger returns and he drinks the milk offered to him without resistance. Shortly after, his eyes close and he falls asleep in silence. His mother watches him with concern deepening. He's already a year old, but he's never once called her mom or his father dad. All he ever does is sit silently watching the news like he's not really a child. His father grows anxious too, and wonders if they've raised him the wrong way. Maybe their son doesn't even recognize them as his parents. Overwhelmed by guilt and worry, the father embraces both his wife and his child and vows to love him even more, hoping that with time their son will open his heart and call them mom and dad someday. In the following days, Seong-guk's condition only worsens. He never truly sleeps, only pretends to close his eyes while secretly keeping them open to watch every frame of news. Each time they switch off the TV, he reacts violently, once even biting his father's hand in protest. Yet despite all his effort, nothing valuable has come from his late-night spying. His frustration builds as each day passes. The world keeps moving forward while he remains stuck in the body of a powerless baby. He thinks back to his old life and how even then he barely allowed himself joy. Only work, only results. And now he has even less control. His mother notices he isn't watching the TV today and asks gently, "Why not watching the news now?" But in his head, Seong-guk thinks there's no use anymore. "I won't find what I need this way. I've already given up." At that moment, his mother picks him up with a smile. "If you're not watching today, then let's talk instead. We need to buy groceries anyway. Want to come to the market with me?" Cradled in her arms, he looks out the window where she points out the flowers blooming outside. "Look how beautiful they are." As they step outside, the breeze is gentle and the weather feels perfect. Suddenly, a girl appears in front of them and his mother quickly explains that she's their landlord. Seong-guk stares curiously at the young girl, thinking, is she on her way to work? The girl responds calmly, saying, "You're heading out late today," before walking off. Watching her leave, Seong-guk's thoughts swirl again. Is this really the owner of our building? How could someone so young hold such a title? After that, they were walking near a construction site where renovations were in progress. Seong-guk was with his mother and the landlord lady. His mom smiled and mentioned she would make a tasty soup later, while Seong-guk internally sighed, knowing he would only be drinking milk again. Just then, his eyes caught something on the upper floor of the building. A thick metal bar was wobbling dangerously, and before anyone could react, it came crashing down. Seong-guk froze, but his mother didn't hesitate for a second. She immediately shielded him with her body. When the dust settled, she was lying on the ground covered in blood, injured badly. The girls nearby were in shock, and one of them quickly called for an ambulance. Seong-guk was unharmed. Thanks to his mother's selfless act, he stared at her in disbelief, unable to process that she might die just because she wanted to protect him. At the hospital, she was rushed into surgery as medical staff briefed the doctor. But then something strange happened. The doctor suddenly paused as if something familiar struck him, but no one knew why. Time passed, and eventually his mother regained consciousness. Her husband was sitting at her side with a tense look on his face. As soon as she opened her eyes, he started asking if she was okay. But instead of answering his concern, she asked immediately how their son was doing. He reassured her that Seongguk's completely fine and right there with them. Tears rolled down Seongguk's face as he clung to his mom. She held him and softly told him not to be afraid because she was all right. The moment overwhelmed him, and he cried even harder while hugging her tightly. His parents assumed he was still scared from the accident, but in truth he was consumed by guilt knowing how close she came to losing her life for him. As she looked around the hospital room, she realized something was off. It was clearly a high-end private room. She asked her husband how they could afford something like this. He looked uneasy, but after a pause, he simply said she needed to focus on resting because she was pregnant. Her eyes widened in shock, and her cheeks turned red from embarrassment. He kissed her forehead gently and told her not to worry about anything else for now. While they shared a quiet, emotional moment, a nurse entered and said visiting time was over. Her husband picked up Seongguk to take him home. As they walked away, Seongguk noticed something that made his heart sink. His father's shoes were completely worn out, and he didn't even have money for bus fare. Despite all that they were about to raise another child, part of him wanted to feel resentment, but another part reflected on everything his parents had done. His father constantly worked himself to the bone, and his mother had just risked her life to protect him. Realizing this, he suddenly felt fortunate to have them. Without thinking, he called out the word, Dad. His father froze in place and slowly turned around, eyes wide in shock. It was the first time his son had ever said that word. Overjoyed, he raised his arm in the air and shouted that his son finally called him Dad. For the first time, Seongguk truly accepted them as his real family. A week passed, and they prepared a small meal to welcome his mother home from the hospital. Seongguk had grown a little taller and dressed in a traditional outfit, while striking a confident pose for a picture his father was taking. His mom giggled and said he looked too adorable. His dad chimed in proudly, saying their son could easily be mistaken for a celebrity. But Seongguk wasn't focused on compliments. Instead, he was troubled by their situation. They were poor and had barely managed to pay the hospital bills or even afford basic transportation. Then it dawned on him that this day was more than a celebration of recovery. It was his birthday. The small party was for him, and looking at his parents, he felt something deeper stir inside. Their love wasn't something money could buy, and that was what truly mattered. Smiling softly, he made a promise to himself. During the time his mom had been hospitalized, he had come to a decision. He realized his parents didn't understand money at all. They didn't know how to manage it, where to invest, or how to build security. And with a massive financial crisis looming in the future, he couldn't just sit back. He had knowledge that could change everything, and he was ready to use it. Just then, a loud knock echoed through the small house. It startled him enough to cover his ears. When he opened the door, it was the landlord lady. She smiled and said she had heard about his mother being discharged, so she dropped by. And right after that, she asked if they had ever thought of making Seongguk a child actor. The scene shifted, and his mother was now standing in front of a building, staring at a poster for an audition. Seongguk muttered that this was the place. But as he looked at the entrance, anxiety filled his expression. He thought maybe they shouldn't be here. Maybe it was a mistake, but deep inside he knew this was an opportunity he couldn't ignore, a step forward for his new life. His mother hesitated, but finally pushed open the door and walked inside. A memory played in his mind of the day the landlord first suggested the audition. She had explained that her company was working on a commercial for a well-known conglomerate and needed a child actor for the main role. When she first saw Seongguk, she was amazed by how cute and striking he looked, and truly believed he had the potential, so she encouraged them to give it a try. At the audition venue, Seongguk's mother arrived, looking slightly nervous, while Seongguk stood beside her with a chilling smirk on his face, thinking that those meant to succeed always find a way. And this was his chance to prove himself while making money too. Since he had grown up surrounded by lights, cameras, and makeup, it all felt like second nature to him. And with people always comparing his looks to top celebrities, he believed he was even more attractive than them. So he was confident he would breeze through this without much effort. But his mother noticed his strange expression and wondered why her son was smiling like that. Just then, the elevator doors opened and a loud voice echoed from inside, demanding them to get in quickly. Both Seongguk and his mother looked startled as an older woman standing nearby turned to them and gestured for them to enter. She was actually the caretaker of a wealthy child standing next to her. Seongguk's mother looked at the boy and commented on how adorable he looked. But the old woman puffed up with pride and declared that of course he was their young master. Before she could say anything more, the boy's mother suddenly snapped at them, warning them not to speak to her son, and accusing Seongguk's mom of trying to spy on the competition. Then, with a smug grin, she confidently announced that her son would win no matter what. Hearing this sparked something in Seongguk. He looked over at the arrogant woman, silently observing her expensive clothes and flashy accessories, thinking it made sense why she acted like that, since she was clearly wealthy. But deep inside, he clenched his fists and swore he would crush them during the audition. When the process started inside the studio, the staff called for child number 8, who performed a small scene while a woman guided him to face the camera. Seongguk's mother watched with concern, thinking how hard it looked. But Seongguk stayed calm, knowing it was only a basic screen test to check appearance and acting potential. Under the hot lights, the boy on stage looked uncomfortable, squinting from the brightness. Then it was time for child number 10, who turned out to be the rich woman's son, and the staff's behavior suddenly shifted, treating her with extra respect. Probably due to her money. The boy was asked to smile for the camera, but he looked petrified, and drops of sweat rolled down his face. From a distance, his mother shouted at him to smile, but no matter how loud she got, he wouldn't respond. And soon tears filled his eyes. The staff sighed and said they had to move on since he couldn't continue, but the rich lady protested, demanding more time. The announcer tried to explain that other kids were waiting, but she scoffed, saying that giving her son a few extra minutes wouldn't ruin anything. At that moment, the director entered the room and called out the next name, Jung Seongguk. His voice was firm and commanding, telling the woman to leave quietly without causing a scene. She stormed off in anger, and as she passed by, she shoved Seongguk's mother aside just to get a closer look at him. Seongguk stared at her with calm intensity, determined to show her what real talent looked like. He stepped into the spotlight and without hesitation, gave the cutest smile he could manage, stunning the entire room. The director himself seemed slightly flustered and told him to look into the camera, which he did with a flawless side angle. When asked to act cute, he did it so naturally that everyone in the room was clearly impressed. The director watched closely and thought to himself that this child wasn't just talented, he was extraordinary. The rich woman stood nearby, boiling with envy as she watched Seongguk perform with such charm and confidence. Her frustration nearly reached its limit. The director then turned to Seongguk's mother and excitedly praised her son, saying he was phenomenal. Completely taking her by surprise as she stood speechless, Seongguk remained calm and muttered to himself that this wasn't even difficult. The director introduced himself as Director Quack and eagerly shook her hand, telling her they should sign a contract right away. Still overwhelmed, she asked if her son was really that good. Since she hadn't expected any of this to happen, the director laughed and said that anyone with experience in the field could see right away how gifted her son was. He explained that whatever pose or emotion he asked for, Seongguk delivered instantly and with perfect timing, as if he could read the director's mind. Hearing this, Seongguk quietly thought that of course he could understand everything, even if he looked like a kid. His mind was far ahead, just as the director was imagining all the future projects they could work on together. A loud crashing sound interrupted the moment. The rich woman had thrown down a light and screamed furiously, accusing the director of making a decision before the audition was officially finished. Her voice echoed through the studio as she shouted that she would never accept anyone else winning over her son. With no other option, the director announced a final showdown between Seongguk and the arrogant woman's child. As the last stage of the audition, everyone gathered together in the hall as the tension built. Seongguk's mother sat quietly, feeling a bit nervous and slightly overwhelmed by the rich woman's commanding tone. But as her eyes landed on her son, she found herself smiling, thinking with pride that no other child in this room could match her son's charm and intelligence. She felt grateful for the director's praise earlier, but that joy quickly turned into uneasiness as the pressure of the moment weighed on her. The elderly caretaker sitting nearby noticed her expression and gently asked if something was wrong, to which Seongguk's mother casually replied that she just needed to visit the restroom, handing her son over to the older woman before leaving. The elderly woman looked at Seongguk with kind eyes and commented softly on how adorable he was. Her gentle compliment made Seongguk smile, but it instantly triggered the rich woman, who snapped furiously at the caretaker, scolding her for praising another child in front of her son and accusing her of drawing comparisons, raising her voice even louder. She warned the old woman that she'd lose her job if she ever did that again, her rage escalating as she mockingly asked if the caretaker wanted to adopt the boy. Trying to shame her publicly, the older woman quickly defended herself, explaining it was just a harmless comment. Nothing more. Seongguk, hearing everything, held back his irritation and thought how satisfying it would be to slap the arrogant woman. Just then, an assistant director approached the rich woman and glanced around before she told him confidently not to worry. Since Seongguk's mother had stepped out, assuring him it was safe to speak, this made Seongguk uneasy as he sensed something was off. The woman muttered bitterly about how much effort she had put into making her son a star and claimed that his success was already guaranteed. Then the shocking truth was revealed when the assistant director confirmed that her son had been selected as the winner. Before the auditions had even started, Seongguk, listening closely, was stunned to realize everything had been rigged. The assistant director warned her that if the director found out, it could cause serious backlash. But the woman laughed it off, saying the director had no power over her family and everything had already been arranged. He tried to reason with her by reminding her of the director's accolades and the influence he carried in the industry. but she dismissed his concerns and insisted that her son must win no matter what. The assistant director reassured her, saying her son did a better job than Seongguk and that Seongguk was practically useless. Just needing more practice, Seongguk heard this and shot the man a cold stare. Hiding his anger behind a calm face, the assistant director began rehearsing the script again with the rich woman's son, having him repeat his lines several times. Meanwhile, Seongguk gave a sly smile as the final audition was about to start. Both boys stood on stage, and Seongguk's mother returned, visibly anxious, but her son turned to her and gave a thumbs up, silently telling her that he had everything under control. The director called for action, and the assistant director gave instructions to the rich woman's son. But before anything else, Seongguk quickly adjusted his position so the camera would capture him clearly, while the other boy instinctively ran toward his mother instead of following directions. The director let out a small laugh and told them to hold off on him for now. Then he focused on testing Seongguk first and asked the assistant director to feed him a line. Unsure if Seongguk could pull it off, the assistant director hesitated but told him to say the word, "Daddy." To his complete surprise, Seongguk delivered the line perfectly on his first attempt. The director grinned in satisfaction and said that he had found the right actor. Then it was time for the rich woman's son to try the same line. The director instructed him to say, "Daddy," but the boy immediately started crying. His mother stood there in shock, unable to process what was happening. Even after all the preparation and practice, her son couldn't say a single word. Overwhelmed by panic, she accidentally blurted out that she had trained him specifically for this, her voice filled with desperation. The director overheard her and looked suspicious, realizing something was wrong. The assistant director quickly stepped in, ending the audition abruptly and thanking everyone in an attempt to cover up the truth and prevent any further damage. Not long after the audition ends, Seongguk's mother is informed of the final result. She hears the words that freeze her in place. The winner is not your son. It's the son of the rich woman. Shocked and speechless, she struggles to understand how this happened. After seeing how well Seongguk performed, anger rising inside her, she marches over to confront the assistant director, demanding an explanation. But he simply shrugs with a smirk and says that just because a child acts cute doesn't mean he deserves to be on screen. The words hit her hard, leaving her stunned. Before she can respond, the rich woman steps in with a sneer, looking down at her and saying coldly that poor people should know their place and never try to compete where they don't belong. Seongguk's mother quickly covers her son's ears, trying to protect him from the venom in those words. But the wealthy woman doesn't stop, her voice dripping with arrogance as she continues talking. Like people without money have no worth. After finishing her tirade, she turns and walks away with her head high, leaving Seongguk's mother frozen in disbelief, tears beginning to form in her eyes, wondering how someone could be so cruel in front of a child. Just then, Seongguk gently tugs her sleeve, his expression calm, thinking to himself that everything is going just as he planned, a sly smile forming on his lips. Right at that moment, the director hurries out, calling for Seongguk's mother. Then the scene shifts back to an earlier conversation between the assistant director and the wealthy woman. Seongguk had already figured out that winning fairly was impossible in this situation. Those with money could manipulate outcomes as they pleased, and in his past life, he had learned that direct confrontation was useless when dealing with powerful people. Instead of fighting a losing battle, he decided to focus on what truly mattered. Making connections and climbing higher, the director, now looking conflicted, explains that the decision had already been made before the audition began, but then gently rests his hand on Seongguk's head and tells him to come to next week's shoot. Seongguk listens carefully, his mind racing, and then everything becomes clear. His plan was never about winning the audition directly. Step 1. Win the director's trust. Step 2. Get consistent child actor roles. Step 3. Build his name. Step 4. Earn real money. He didn't just want to appear in ads, he wanted to act. And if he could work with someone like this director, the path to success would open wide. With a grin forming on his face, he thinks about how this could change his family's life. His mother still looks unsure and asks why they were invited if he didn't win. The director explains that backup child actors are always kept on hand in case the main one can't perform or falls ill. He also admits he's not confident in the rich woman's son. The boy cries constantly and may not be useful on set. Seongguk understands instantly. The director doesn't fully believe in the official winner, which is why he wants Seongguk nearby. The director suddenly grabs his mother's hand and bows slightly, sincerely asking them to join the shoot. Seongguk's mother hesitates, unsure whether this is the right thing for her son, but Seongguk is screaming inside for her to accept, his eyes shining with determination and ambition. The director laughs, clearly impressed by how much the boy understands without speaking a word. He hands her his card, gives her a contract, and even offers his personal number for any future work. This was exactly what Seongguk had hoped for, to earn the director's trust and move beyond modeling into acting. Soon, the scene shifts to the set. Seongguk's mother arrives, amazed by the size and energy of the filming location. Then, the assistant director rushes over, spotting them. But Seongguk glares at him with icy eyes, making the man uncomfortable without saying a word. Inside, Seongguk is fuming, thinking about how corrupt this assistant director is. As they are led toward the waiting area, Seongguk suddenly notices something shocking. Among the set props are washing machines and other products made by his family's company. The same products that later became wildly successful and caused the stock price to explode. Just then, the rich woman appears again, her voice sharp as she snaps at Seongguk's mother, asking why they're here since they lost the audition. But this time, Seongguk's mother doesn't back down. She boldly replies that the director invited them as backup. Seongguk watches proudly, thinking how cool his mom just sounded, silently cheering her on. The rich woman looks puzzled and repeats the words backup model in disbelief. The assistant director quickly tries to smooth things over by explaining the situation, but the wealthy woman scoffs and insists there's no need for a backup, since her son is more than capable of handling the role, ignoring the reality that her son had failed miserably. However, her son stands nearby, clearly nervous, his expression stiff with anxiety. Seongguk instantly picks up on it, thinking to himself that the boy doesn't seem like he can act at all. Still, the woman keeps pushing, telling them to leave since extras aren't needed here. But then Seonmi, the lead actress, enters the set. Her presence grabs everyone's attention, her beauty making the entire crew pause. She walks over calmly and says they'll be shooting the scene with this boy today. The assistant director quickly explains the casting situation, pointing out that the official lead is the rich woman's son, while Seongguk is only a backup. At first, Seonmi heads toward the rich woman's son and reaches out her hand kindly, attempting to connect. But the boy gives no response, his attitude cold and standoffish. Seonmi's expression darkens, annoyed. She turns and walks straight to Seongguk, who greets her with a warm smile and takes her hand confidently. Instantly, her mood lifts, and she begins chatting with him comfortably. Seongguk's mother steps forward proudly and says her son is very sociable and gets along with everyone. Seonmi laughs lightly and announces that she wants to act with this boy instead of the other one. The rich woman, hearing this, completely loses control and grabs Seonmi's arm, shouting in anger. But Seonmi calmly pulls her arm away, unfazed by the tantrum. Seongguk and his mother watch the drama unfold, barely holding back their amusement. Then suddenly, a man places his hand on the rich woman's shoulder and tells her coldly to lower her voice. Seonmi turns and greets him with a polite smile, calling him vice chairman. The man nods and steps forward, and Seonmi curiously asks what brings him to the set. The man replies that he's here to observe the shoot. Seongguk stares at him, frozen, the realization hitting hard. This is John Jae-hyung, vice chairman of Samyung, and more importantly, his father. Seongguk remembers how his father wasn't a great parent or husband, but a capable executive. During difficult times, he led internal restructuring and made investments in promising fields, earning a name as a forward-thinking business leader. Even Forbes had recognized him as a rising figure in the tertiary sector. Yet, despite his business success, he was known for being a playboy and a neglectful family man. Memories from Seongguk's previous life come flooding back, including when his father introduced him to Seonmi, who at the time was one of his many mistresses and the one he liked most. Seonmi now points at Seongguk and says she wants to shoot the commercial with him, praising his charm. Just then, the vice chairman steps toward Seongguk and addresses him directly. Inside, Seongguk refers to him as father, but keeps his expression neutral. Someone nearby calls out to the vice chairman, addressing him as chairman and reminding him it's time to head inside. Before leaving, the man tells everyone they should get ready and then turns to the rich woman, warning her sternly to behave and cooperate during filming. The woman flinches and bows quickly, clearly shaken by the rebuke. Watching this unfold, Seongguk thinks to himself that even the richest people still bow when someone truly powerful speaks. Because in this world, money alone isn't enough. His father may be a terrible parent, but when it comes to business, he is ruthless and commanding. The man then places a hand on Seongguk's shoulder and tells him to do well in the shoot, after which he leaves without another word, watching his father's back disappear. Seongguk makes a quiet promise to himself. He will live a better life than the one he lived before, and this time, he will protect his mother and hold on to the family he has come to treasure, unlike his previous life where he was left without love. This time, he's determined to build something real, something lasting. Just then, the assistant director calls the rich woman over and tells her it's time for her son to start filming. A staff member leads her in the direction of the set, while both boys are positioned nearby. Seongguk glances over at the other child with a mischievous smirk, like he's already a few steps ahead. The scene shifts to the commercial set, where the director walks the team through the concept. First, Seonmi will place dirty laundry into the washing machine, Then the child actor is supposed to hug the clean clothes, smell them with a smile, and call her mommy. Seongguk thinks back to his previous life, remembering how that very commercial had become a massive hit. Celebrated for its direction and winning the Donghai Advertising Award, the child actor from that shoot had skyrocketed to fame. But as soon as the cameras start rolling, the rich woman's son begins crying uncontrollably, ruining take after take. Seonmi quickly grows irritated and demands to know what's wrong with him, why he keeps acting up. When people try to calm him down, he lashes out and even hits those around him, shocking the staff. Sungguk's mother watches with wide eyes, stunned by the boy's violent behavior. Meanwhile, Sungguk just smiles quietly to himself. It turns out he had spoken to the boy earlier, offering him what he called a useful tip. If you don't want to do this, and you want to get out from your mom's control, just cry as loud as you can and hit people whenever Seonmi comes near. Then they'll have no choice but to send you home. Somehow, even as a child, Seongguk had managed to communicate his idea and influence the boy's actions, and now everything was going exactly as he planned.